in large rooms, people are often performing.
Mhm.
That is not a bad thing. You're getting an understanding as to aesthetically, energetically, visibility wise, momentum wise, who this person is or what their brand is all about. Like large rooms, people are performing.
Mm.
In small rooms, people are participating. They're 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 not managing perception as much. They're more honest. They're more curious. They're more generous. They ask better questions. They share things that are unfinished in their heads, not overly polished. And I do think that's what people are craving because we have been in an era of performance for so long.
This is the Wine and Dine Me podcast. Forget the etiquette. No rules, just real talk. On today's podcast, I have Anja Winikka, the founder and CEO of the Freeda Network, a private membership network for leaders in the global events industry. Through curated peer groups, intimate gatherings, and high-level conversations, Freeda brings together top creative founders, planners, designers, photographers, producers, and other industry leaders to build deeper relationships, exchange insight, and navigate the realities of running businesses at the highest level. Before founding Freeda, Anja spent more than a decade at the Knot Worldwide, where she helped shape modern wedding media and was later named the Knot's chief innovator by Adweek. In 2021, she co-founded Maroo, a Y Combinator-backed payments platform built for creative small businesses, onboarding thousands of event professionals in its first year. What I love about Anja's perspective is that she has seen the event industries through so many different lenses: media, startups, entrepreneurship, hospitality, motherhood, community, and human behavior. Today's conversation will explore how influence has changed, why trusted relationships matter more than mass visibility, what creative founders struggle with privately, and why the right rooms can shape not only your business, but the way you live and lead. You've lived through several eras of the wedding industry: media, which we actually met way back when in Kansas City when you were with Knot. Crazy. Media, tech, startups, and now a curated community. So how did you go from the Knot to Maroo to founding Freeda?
Yeah. When I started at the Knot in 2006 with a journalism degree from Kansas and then aspirations of working at a magazine in New York City, and I'd moved there basically with nothing in my bank account. Both media and subsequently our industry at the time was still like very much built around mass attention, right? And editorial editors. And it was the heyday of magazines. And that's how you got featured. Like the power sat with the big platforms, the magazines, the directories, like the places where you could aggregate all of the eyeballs. And like, to be fair, at that time, like that is how it worked. Like that's literally how you built your business at the time. And at the Knot, I led the forefront of the knot.com during its heyday. So couples were looking for information, inspiration, vendor discovery in a really different way than they are today.
Right.
So I spent a decade there doing that, eventually leading, pretty innovative initiatives, watching the internet fundamentally reshape how people were marketing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
What became really clear to me was that visibility alone, though, over the years, like was no longer enough. Everyone, as blogs sort of came about and then social media and things, like everyone could be seen, everyone could post, everyone could advertise. And then the real differentiator became trust.
Yeah.
Right. And then so in 2021, I co-founded Maroo, which you mentioned. So that realization around the trust really only deepened then. We were this Y Combinator backed fintech. We raised all this money on a mission to modernize money for the industry. And at Maroo, just in those first couple of years, we onboarded thousands of wedding businesses very quickly. And for the first time for me, I had this direct window into the operational and the financial realities of creative entrepreneurs in our industry at scale.
Right.
And I saw then how isolated founders felt, even when they looked successful from the outside, and how much business was still happening through referrals, relationships, private conversations, not through the algorithms. Plus, the industry was changing and luxury clients were becoming more private and things like this. And so with social media sort of coming in, the realization that like people were craving discernment instead of endless options, that was sort of the moment that think I really understood that like we needed to be having much more valuable conversations in the industry. They weren't happening publicly anymore.
Right.
And that was eventually what led me to build and found the Freeda Network, which was built on this belief that the future of our industry, especially at the high end, would not be about building bigger audiences. It would be about better rooms.
Right. Exactly. What is the difference between visibility and real influence now?
Yeah. I mean, I think visibility, it means people know who you are. Right. And influence means people trust you enough to make a decision because of you. And those are really different things. And I think we're entering this shift, and I actually think we already have, where especially at the top of creative industry, not just ours, but interior design and others as well, where people are becoming more discerning. Again, like clients are more private than ever before. Referrals are mattering more.
Yeah.
Trusted networks matter more. And the irony is like the more saturated the internet gets, the more valuable the trust becomes.
That's so interesting. And
Right?
I feel like you've said this before, and the consumer, I think, is really getting on board with it, but follower count doesn't really matter so much anymore.
No, it really doesn't. I mean, I think when it comes to, I mean, here's the thing, like as a business, you have to be visible. Like visibility is a very important part of the recipe of running a business in our industry. But that follower count is increasingly perhaps not even a great metric at all
Yeah.
as to trustworthy you are. In fact, one could argue that it can look a little ick if the entire strategy appears that you are looking for visibility and followers and engagement as opposed to having trusted relationships and being a person that this person can trust their finances with.
Right, exactly. Because our industry is so visual, our work is visual, how does a creative in the wedding industry build influence that's deeper than aesthetics?
Yeah. I mean, again, aesthetics matter,
Yeah.
right? Like, it's still so visual. Taste matters. The way we present ourselves matters. Like all of that is still on the table. But the long term, the influence is built through a point of view
Yeah.
and emotional intelligence and through the rooms that you create. And increasingly, I think, that is what these luxury high-end couples are looking for. Like, what kinds of rooms are these people in?
Yes.
How are they interacting with one another? What seems to be the goal? So I think through the consistency between, what you say publicly and who you are privately, those are the ones who are creating the real trust over time. And I do think that is how you'll get booked down the line too from the same people.
It is so interesting. And speaking of the rooms, let's talking about Freeda.
Yeah.
Freeda is interesting just because it's not another networking group, right? There's so much intention behind it. And for people who don't know, you're curating peer groups and intimate gatherings and high level conversations that are meant for founders who find it lonely at the top. And there's this sense of vulnerability and trust that is so rare that you have been able to capture this and cultivate this. So what was the moment when you realized that Freeda needed to exist?
Um, it was when I realized and noticed that so many people of the most successful people in this industry were quietly craving the same thing, and that is depth.
Yeah.
Not another conference,
Yeah.
not another giant networking event where everyone leaves with a stack of like new Instagram followers or whatever and a few relationships. It was like they wanted spaces where they could actually exhale, where they could be honest
Mhm.
with people who understood the complexity of what you're carrying on your shoulders. Like we live in all pockets of this country. A lot of us may be doing fabulous things all around the world, but like maybe you live in a suburb and like your day to day is also drop off and pick up. Like it's very lonely.
Yeah.
But you're carrying the complexity of somebody's enormous event. And the pressure, I think, of leading teams, navigating these clients, managing growth, maybe your marriage, maybe parenting, burnout, ambition, all the things that like come with being an entrepreneur, like everyone, all these folks like look incredible online, but that's the part everybody was missing. It was like you can be highly visible and successful and still feel professionally isolated, and
Exactly.
you could be respected, but you could not even have true peers really, or maybe you have like a few loose ends on DMs or you could text people, but like feeling surrounded, I just feel like there was such a gap between networking and belonging because networking is often transactional,
Yes.
or, at the lightest level, but belonging is about
Yeah.
relationships and relational.
How do you, because obviously with a group like that, it requires a special type of person, right? And I'm sure there, like anytime you're vulnerable, there are those insecurities of like, well, if I say this, what if that person might take it? And, how does it, do you naturally attract and naturally weed out people who would abuse the system, if you would? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, like, the group doesn't work unless everyone is willing to be unless everyone is willing to be vulnerable with one another.
Yes.
And what I found in the first year or two of building was that we would have members join, and then they would get into the room and they would be very uncomfortable.
Mm.
And it was like really quickly and really obvious, like the ones who didn't belong. And as the message sort of grew out from the network itself, we sort of did weed those types out. I don't, it's not for everyone. Not everyone actually wants to get down with their ambitions and such with other business owners, but the ones who do, you know, I think they flourish. I think they grow. And I actually think that's how real growth happens.
Well, okay, great segue into my next question, which is, do you think the right relationships can change the trajectory of your business more than visibility can? And how have you seen that happen through Freeda?
Oh my God. Yeah, I think the right room changes everything. I think it makes you feel like expanded but grounded at the same time. Like
Mm.
that's the feeling.
Mm.
You leave your conversations feeling a little bit different. You feel challenged without having ever performed for anybody else in the room. You don't feel any pressure to posture, like you feel like you don't have to prove your worth every second because everyone in the room sort of already has that level of respect. But I also think it raises your standards. I think it really matters when you get, because the way it works is like every month, these groups meet for 1 hour at a time. And that over time compounds.
Mm.
Like the idea of like giving yourself as a founder 1 hour a month to have a great conversation with your peers. Like you may be like, I don't know what I'm going to say this month, but I'm going to show up for myself and for my group.
Right.
It does sharpen your thinking. It creates better habits. It raises your standards. You may not know or understand or that like your version of full service is different than somebody else's version of full service. And then you all of a sudden got down to it and you're like, oh, you don't do that for your clients? Like I do that all the time. That's so fascinating. The other person's like, oh, I should probably be doing that for my clients. Like those are the aha moments that sort of raise the standards in the bar. And then it also introduces you to people who I think help you become more honest about what you actually want, because
Yeah.
you can be in a vacuum where you could have things written down on notes like, I want to have this many clients or be paying this much. But like, actually, if you say that out loud to a group of humans that actually understand what you're saying, they could say, well, it sounds like you're asking for a couple different things that seem like they're in contrast. Like, which one is it?
Oh, that's interesting. And you also structure the groups regionally, right? There's a strategic, oh, no, you don't.
No, not regionally.
Okay. But there's a
But
strategy behind how you pair people.
oh my God, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it would not work well if, you may think as a photographer, it'd be great to be in a room with all planners, but planners don't want to be in a room with photographers talking about their businesses.
Right.
That's just the way it is. And so, no, there's definitely a method to matching. And so most of our members are matched by category, but also by like years in business,
Mm.
the type of, team they have, the number of events they do, and of course, like what they charge and the types of weddings they're working on. We have groups that are more focused on corporate. We have planner groups who are mostly destination, but actually oftentimes they're not in the same market, maybe regional, but we like to mix it up. We like to have rooms with like southern states, Northern California, New York City. It makes for a more dynamic conversation because we know that like doing this thing, there is no rule book.
Right.
But having the right people around the table and exchanging ideas is absolutely the way to grow.
I think it's also unique in that the client, the couples, are now more frequently hiring people outside of their market. It used to be a novelty to bring someone in from an outside market, but now it's probably because of social media and Reddit, it's like they now fully understand that anyone in the country can serve them anywhere in the country.
Yeah. Yeah, it's almost like weird to put it on your website anymore. Like,
It
we
is.
travel, like, of course you do.
Right, exactly, exactly. So I think that national conversation is interesting because it allows you to understand the perspectives of, say, a client who's New York based and all of her friends might have been married in New York, but she wants to get married in LA and they do things very differently.
And by the way, having a group where you could turn to said number of people and say, like, "Where are my West Coasters out? Does anyone know somebody who has, like, a lampshade that is this, and
Yes,
this dimension in the West? I live in the East." That is gold. Like,
gold.
that's the other part of these, groups that makes them so special is they all have their own WhatsApp or text chains, and they're constantly sort of keeping in touch along the way or keeping each other accountable.
Right, exactly. What about longevity? Because I know longevity is something that you like to focus on. What does longevity look like in our industry that rewards constant performance and aesthetics? Like, you know, what is it? What does a mature business look like in this creative world?
Yeah. I mean, I think longevity in our industry looks a lot less glamorous than people imagine.
Right,
I think being at it is not sexy. It's hard. And I think, from the outside, our industry really does celebrate aesthetics, the success, momentum, growth, the young, person sort of like understanding how to do all the things. And I think at the end of the day, like there is like a lot of unspoken pressure to always appear
right,
to be relevant, booked, expanding, thriving. But I think if you want longevity, you have to build something much deeper than performance.
sure,
And it's funny because there's also an element of age in here as well. Like when you build a business, oftentimes business owners that get started in our industry around the age of a bride, oftentimes business owners in the Freeda Network, well, there's a requirement. First of all, you have to have been in business for at least 7 years. But on top of that, the average business owner in Freeda is 14 years in business.
yeah,
And, I think you need systems, you need boundaries, you need financial clarity, you need to be emotionally resistant.
yeah, wow,
Right?
Mhm.
You need relationships that can sustain you through the different eras of your life and career. Because obviously, when you first get started, you sort of start with the newbies around you as you build, as we all have experienced, like people sort of peel off and change directions or go back to corporate, but
Yeah,
you need a group of people that you can really count on. And I think that is what longevity requires. And I think like with with maturity, it's like you go from asking yourself, like, how do I get seen? How am I validated? How do I get featured?
yeah,
And then the questions as a mature business owner become much more nuanced. It's what kind of a life does my business really create for me? What am I actually optimizing for? Like, what should I actually stop doing?
right,
Um, what am I not willing to sacrifice anymore? What pace is sustainable? Because I've actually experienced too much burnout, right?
right.
That's business maturity to me. And those are the kinds of conversations that you know, they they're quieter and they're not the conversation you have at the cocktail party,
For sure.
but they're big deal questions that require thought and support.
So, knowing that social media still is very much a thing, right? And these established mature businesses still have to convey credibility, right? So how do you convey credibility now with social media now that print is pretty much not the avenue as it was when you started? So how do you get that across? Because I will say, and I'm someone who's been in business for 14 years, and sometimes I open Instagram, I'm like, wow, that person is doing same caliber, like, or so it seems on Instagram. I don't know how the service and delivery was, but I'm like, right? Service, but that doesn't convey, like, it's harder and harder, I think, to convey credibility in social media.
Agreed. And I think, building authority without turning your life into a content machine
Right.
is actually going to be increasingly important. Because I really think as we move into this era of like the mistrust around our industry is so high at this point.
Mhm.
I think the only way to cut through it, especially on social media, is to have a clear point of view
Okay.
and on what and what you believe,
Mhm.
not just your values and things
Mhm.
like this, which are important, but also a clear point of view as to, like, what types of clients you work with, what your weddings are, and how you do what you do.
Mhm.
I think for so long, you're right. It's like it's been so performative, and that's what the algorithms have suggested you do, and that's what everyone told you to do. But I think like the strongest brands, and this goes for outside of our industry, but it certainly applies, are the ones, and the founders are the ones who stand for something really specific, and they're able to articulate those ideas very clearly, both in person to their client, but also through social media. And so I think it's a thoughtful perspective, um, is just going to be far more powerful than like 50 pieces of content or like a million weddings,
Mhm.
photos.
Mhm.
And I do think people are craving
Yeah.
restraint. Like, I think restraint is important in all this conversation because it's like, you do see it's like you open up Instagram and there's like 5 million weddings from all over the country. Like, how's everyone doing these things?
Right.
But I do think that, like, instead of focusing on all that, it's like, honestly, like, w- what is your point of view? How do you discern what's good and what's not great? Where's your substance? And where does that sit the strongest for you? And then how can you communicate that online?
Interesting. Yeah. I feel like discerning clients too are starting to sniff out the difference.
Yeah, I actually think they're looking for signals that are harder to fake.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, millennials got married and you just had pretty photos and you got booked,
That
or
was
you
it.
got a blog or whatever, and it was like good to go. But I think, even increasingly, like, being featured in Vogue, they're like, wait, was that real or did they pay for that? I mean, they're all looking for reasons to not trust you. And so I do think they're sniffing it out and they're looking for credibility. And I think the questions they're asking themselves are not like, was that pretty? Because actually, we're all creating really incredible, beautiful events. It's who trusts this person privately,
Mm.
who refers them, what rooms are they seen in, throughout the year. How, like, do I know anybody that's worked with them, and how do they feel? Do they seem like they could handle the nuances or the pressures of my life and understand confidentiality to the level that I require? Like, I think all those things are credibility that they're looking for, because as we know, it's very easy to lose their trust if they sniff out, like you said, somebody who it just appears that they're looking for likes.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that also can be tied back into what you're doing with Frida and how there is a craving for deeper conversation, more thoughtful curation of people and gatherings and rooms. Um, what does that intimacy allow? Like, I want to talk about scaling.
Mhm.
Um, because you're right. Anyone right now can go out and produce a gorgeous wedding, but you have to have those systems in place for scaling, those relationships in place for scaling and growth. So, what does the intimacy that you've created through Frida allow that to help you scale?
Yeah, intimacy to my mind, like, it changes the quality of the conversation completely. That's what it does. I think table stakes. And I don't think this is a conversation about like why scale is bad and intimacy is better. It's that they're very different and they're very both differently important.
Hmm.
In large rooms, people are performing. In small rooms, people are participating. And
Wait, say that
in,
again. Say that again.
in large rooms, people are often performing.
Mhm.
That is not a bad thing. You're getting an understanding as to aesthetically, energetically, visibility wise, momentum wise, who this person is or what their brand is all about. Like, large rooms, people are performing.
Mm.
In small rooms, people are participating. They're 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 not managing perception as much. They're more honest. They're more curious. They're more generous. They ask better questions. They share things that are unfinished in their heads, not overly polished. Like, and I do think that's what people are craving because we have been in an era of performance for so long. But I wouldn't say it goes away. It's not to say like we should run away from that. I actually think there's a really strong case in our industry, especially for places for performance
Right,
and to understand how, at what level can we push it.
right.
But I do think we really under index on the connection and on the smaller rooms, and that's why I think people are just craving it so much.
I think that's really cool. Um, Where do you think so looking ahead, the wedding industry has changed so much. If you think about 5 years ago, we were just emerging from COVID. And I feel like the last 5 years were just an anomaly and we're back to equilibrium. I mean, a new equilibrium, but I feel like we're back to an equilibrium. And so much has changed in the last 5 years. So, looking at the 5 years to come, what do you think that the wedding industry will need from its founders?
It's a really good question. I do, and I agree with you. The pendulum kind of went swung and swung all the way back, and now it's sort of settling. And you're like, what does this pendulum even mean? But
Mhm.
I think the next 5 years are going to require creative founders in our industry to become far more. I hate this word because it's overly used. Far more intentional,
Mhm.
um, emotionally intelligent. I cannot like underline that enough. Like you have to have EQ and
Wait,
offer
for what? For like internal purposes or with the client or
all of the above.
all?
I mean, I think what I'm saying are these are mature
Yes.
business attributes.
Mhm, mhm, mhm.
So there's like, there's I'm being intentional with what I do, how I do it, the people I say yes to, the jobs I take and things like that. More emotionally intelligent, more understanding that like approaching a networking event to be transactional does not display good EQ.
True.
you
Great.
you are right. I
Yeah.
mean, and you've met people at events where you're like, oh my God, you're literally just trying to sort of like get something. Ew,
Yeah. Yeah.
no EQ. Why don't you get it?
Yeah.
Like, don't you see this? So I do think like people who have it will succeed and those who don't will probably just need to focus a little more on it. And then the ones I think that do super well in the next 5 years are also operationally mature more so than they've had to be in the past. Cause I actually don't think in the past it was such a requirement because like we've been saying, like our industry rewarded momentum, being seen, being booked, creatively differentiated, but like all of that is sort of table stakes now. And so the environment is more complex and it requires more from us as founders.
Mhm.
Economically, culturally, we need to have a point of view. Technologically, we have to be able to embrace what's coming our way and emotionally.
And I think the demands and expectations of the client with the increased need for transparency is there. And so you have to have those systems in place to back it up.
Precisely.
Yeah.
Yeah. It can be one thing to say, oh, I'm a very transparent planner.
Yeah.
It's another thing to say, my back end of my business is set up so that you never have to think twice about how much you're paying for what. And I can tell you that in at a
Yeah.
glance.
Yeah. It's refreshing. I think part of this is because our industry started and it was a new industry. And so everyone was figuring it out and we don't have these rules and regulations to guide us. And so yeah, it's happened naturally, but here we are. I think we're starting to get into a really good place.
Slowly but surely, here we are.
Here we are. Um, this brings us to the end of our conversation. I have two questions to wrap our conversation with. Um, what do you want creative founders to reconsider about the rooms they are in?
Hmm. I love this question. I want founders to look around. I think of it like this, like what you are, what do they say? Like you are what you eat.
Mhm.
You are what you think. You are the people who you spend the most time with.
Right.
So I think asking yourself, like, am I having on the regular eye level conversations with people who challenge me, who make me feel grounded but expansive? And if I'm not, like, where are those people? Look in all corners too. There's not just, obviously those of the Freeda Network, but there's also like, there are other industries that are similar to ours who can be very
Mhm.
inspiring. There's interior design, the art world. My best friend sells art. She's an art advisor and she's worked in the art world forever. And we have so much in common.
Yeah.
It's unbelievable. So I would challenge you to like really think about the people you're surrounding yourself with and whether they're challenging you, helping you prioritize, not just stay accountable. That's so basic, but like truly challenging your point of view as to what you're building and why you're doing it. And I think you need people who kind of do different things for you and to surround yourself with, sort of think of it as like a formula. You need somebody, of course, to help you balance out like your personal life and there's health and marriage and parenting and all these things that are very important. And you need people who understand you and see you as an entrepreneur and that.
Right.
But then I do think on the business side, it's really important to have people who just maybe they're like one step ahead or they're slightly different than you, but they really know how to do the thing that you're not so good at. Surrounding yourself with those people is so paramount.
Right. I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
What last question is for the founder listening who feels successful on paper, but unsupported behind the scenes, what would you tell her?
Mhm. I would say this, you're probably not as alone as you think you are. Most high achieving people carry things privately that no one sees from the outside.
Mhm.
Most high achievers don't talk about the pressure. They don't like to share it. The decision fatigue, the loneliness, the fear of disappointment, disappointing other people
Mhm.
mostly,
Mhm.
the exhaustion of being on all the time. And I would say like all of the like because in our industry we reward image and performance so heavily, most people feel, and I think any high achieving, quietly sort of maybe lonely founder feels like they have to keep proving themselves even when they're struggling. But I would say success without any support is a very fragile thing.
Mm,
And none of us were meant to build both a meaningful life, but also a meaningful business entirely alone. And I would encourage that person to become much more thoughtful about finding people who can hold honest conversations where they can be challenged thoughtfully and actually give them a heads up and say, hey, there's something actually going on in my life right now. I just need you guys to know that so that they can sort of reciprocate that and carry on. Because I think, again, I mean, the right relationships really can change everything about your life,
yeah,
just professionally. And most mature thing a founder could ask themselves is not how do I get into more rooms, but it's which rooms actually allow me to become more fully myself.
I love that. You're doing an amazing thing with Freeda.
Thank
Amazing,
you.
amazing thing. It's really inspiring to see your pivots in the industry. I think that's a huge thing that we don't talk about enough is not being afraid to pivot. And you're the ultimate example of that. And how many different opportunities there are within this industry.
I want to say the through line to all of those moments in my career are people. It's relationships. None of those things could have happened without having had friends, real humans behind the scenes supporting me and sort of challenging me to look for the next thing. And yeah, it looks like a bunch of different jobs, but it's actually like there's a huge through line in the background, which is my friends
Oh,
and my relation.
absolutely. That's so
Yeah,
cool. Well, Anya, thank you so much for being with me. I hope to see you again soon. If you're coming to Charleston, let me know.
I will.
Okay.
I definitely.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Thanks.